Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, December the 25th, 2025. So it is Christmas Day, so I have to say, well, happy Christmas. And, because it's Christmas, I thought we would look at something fairly festive today, which would, of course, be the Trump Epstein saga. It goes on. I have talked about it before. I'm sure I will talk about it again. And we have all these files being produced, and a lot of them are redacted. And it does make me think about Hades. Hades is this hypothetical planet that Alfred Witte came up with at the beginning of the century, I think, as a result of his observations during the First World War, I believe. He observed Russian artillery barrages on the Eastern Front, and so he reverse engineered a couple of planets like Cupido and Hades. And Hades is a planet of things that are somewhat disreputable, can be connected with crime and perhaps garbage. And yeah, I do think that there is a prominence to Hades in Donald Trump's chart, as well as in the horoscopes of Epstein and also Ghislaine Maxwell. So I wanted to look at the Epstein saga, with regard to Hades, and to have a look at its role. But before I do that, I want to consider the astrology and I Ching for Christmas Day. So here is the chart for Christmas Day, set for noon New York time, and at noon New York time, the moon is in Pisces. So the moon in Pisces, well, that's not a bad place for the moon on Christmas Day. I mean, Christmas Day is supposed to be a day for relaxing and enjoying the company of family and perhaps friends. And so having the moon in Pisces, making a sextile to Venus, well, sort of a sextile to Venus. It's quite a wide sextile to Venus, but the moment the moon moves into Pisces, it does indeed make a sextile to Pisces. Sorry, make a sextile to Venus. I think that moon sextile Venus is going to be more powerful if you're in Australia or New Zealand, but still, we've got a moon which is not in a bad position. It's also making a sextile to the Sun, and it's making a sextile to Mars, and it's making a conjunction to the North Node. I think that the conjunction between the Moon and the North Node should be regarded as something fortunate. Traditionally, the North Node is of the nature of Jupiter, South Node of the nature of Saturn. So having Moon conjunct North Node in Pisces means, we're doing the right thing. It is okay to enjoy oneself if there is the opportunity. And moon sextile sun, there's always a good aspect. Things are in harmony with one another. And additionally, the moon is in mutual reception with Jupiter. Moon and Jupiter are in each other's signs. So I'm always wary of being positive. I don't want to create false expectations, but I think the overall picture for today probably looks quite good. Exciting? I wouldn't say it's necessarily exciting, but there is an emotionality today. And okay, in the end, the moon does make a conjunction to Saturn, but that's not about today. We don't have to worry about moon conjunct Saturn right now. So overall, I think that things are looking pretty good. So that's a picture New York. If we set the chart for noon in New York, if we set the chart for noon in Sydney, Australia, as a representative of Australasia, well, the moon is at 2955 Aquarius. So that means as the day progresses in Sydney, the moon will move into Pisces. So, if you're celebrating Christmas, then it may be that Christmas will take off the moment the moon moves into Pisces. The moon at 29 Aquarius. Well, that's not that great. The moon making a square to Uranus, but eventually, well, not even eventually, by the very early afternoon. I mean, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, or if you're in New Zealand, then well, what about if you're in Australia? If you're in New Zealand, well, if you're in New Zealand, then you are a couple of hours ahead of Australia. So probably the later you start your Christmas festivities, the better. You want to wait for the moon to move into Pisces. So that's perhaps the key moment. Try to start wherever you are in Australia or New Zealand or East Asia. Try to wait for the moon to move into Pisces before starting anything, whatever the start time actually is for you. But overall, once the moon moves into Pisces, it makes a sextile to Venus, sextile to the Sun. So that looks good. But there's no hurry to start things. And certainly in New Zealand, try to have a late start to the Christmas festivities. And then there is the heliocentric view, putting the Sun at the center of the solar system. And here we have the Earth at 4 degrees Cancer. So the Earth has made a square to Saturn and Neptune. So that was, about 3 days ago. It is now applying to an opposition of Mars. Now, this opposition to Mars is not immediate. I mean, it's 6 degrees apart. I think we're starting to feel it, but only just. But there will be a point when the Sun is aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint, but not today. So I don't think that you need to worry too much about the heliocentric chart today on Christmas Day. I don't think that's going to spoil anything. So let me now move to the 12 signs. And because it's Christmas Day, I'm going to try to be positive. I mean, there's a lot to be positive about. I'm also going to try to be brief. I mean, why not? I don't want to have some sort of collected video, sort of putting 2 days into one video in an arbitrary way. I mean, why should the 25th and the 26th be different? Sorry, why should they be the same? I mean, they are 2 separate days, so I'm going to have a video for the 26th, I'm going to have a video for the 25th. I don't want to sort of merge the two, but I'm still hoping that I'm going to be able to keep my forecasts for the 12 signs short. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Thursday, December the 25th, 2025. Aries. It's not a day when you feel that you have to do anything, but then it is Christmas Day, so that's completely logical. You are perhaps in accord with the Christmas spirit, and part of the Christmas spirit, to an extent, is being isolated. Okay, I know that Christmas in the UK, if you are in the UK, just is a day where everything comes to a complete standstill. I think more so than in other parts of the world. I've spent Christmas in Slovakia, for example, and Christmas Day, still lots of things going on. Things are open. Public transport is moving, but not in the UK. So if you're an Aries in the UK, then you're going to be very familiar with the Christmas shutdown. That's not going to bother you, because I don't think that you're going to be feeling especially sociable. I mean, not in a sense of moving beyond your family and people you're close to, and maybe just keeping a low profile and not feeling you want to draw attention to yourself, maybe that's just the right approach. But then, the moon is making a sextile to Mars, and that's a reminder that Mars is your ruler, and Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So with the moon making a sextile to Mars, you're able to do enough. You feel that you can assert yourself in your own way. So that means that if you are celebrating Christmas, you don't want to make a big exhibition of it. That's not really what you want to do. But is there a possibility that you feel you don't have a choice? I mean, one thing that is going on over Christmas, and I'm not saying it's going to necessarily affect you, is that we do have this conjunction between Venus, Sun, and Mars, and the Sun looks as if it's on the Sun continues to be on the Venus-Mars midpoint, and it is in quite a sort of a high-profile part of your chart. I don't think that you're necessarily completely relaxed. I think that you are still thinking a little bit about the future. You know that Christmas Day is not going to last forever. It will soon be the next day, 26. 26 is for many is just a normal working day, could be, and so you are maybe thinking ahead. But as far as Christmas Day itself is concerned, you probably want to do things in your own way, and I don't think that there is a huge amount of pressure there. At the same time, Aries, you're not complacent, and you may find that you're able to count your blessings. Because you know that however difficult things might be for you, and I'm not saying they are difficult, but if they happen to be difficult, you always know that there are people worse off than yourself. And it is a time when many Arians are thinking about maybe other parts of the world, unfolding tragedies in other parts of the world. You're aware of that, and many Arians do have a sense of social justice. So if you're engaging with the news and you're seeing what's happening to people over Christmas, what kind of conditions people are living, that might bother you. Perhaps it might bother you more than usual. You're talking about, perhaps tragic destinies of not just one person, but lots of people, and that does give you pause for thought. So you can't entirely relax over Christmas, and it's nothing to do with your home environment. I think it's just because you know what kind of world you're living in, and you do have a sense of wider empathy for your fellow human beings. Taurus, it looks like being quite a good Christmas. The moon is making a sextile to Venus. I mean, that moon sextile Venus is going to be especially strong if you are in Australia, New Zealand. Maybe not quite so strong if you're in the Americas, but it's still an aspect which is there. Whatever your time zone, and because moon, your moon is your moon is in Pisces, Venus is in Capricorn. Pisces and Capricorn are two signs which have a natural rapport with each other. Also, moon in Pisces is in the exaltation sign of Venus. So Taurus, you can be warm and friendly and sociable, and it's okay. It really is okay to be sociable, because the moon is making a conjunction to the North Node as well as a sextile to the Sun. I mean, the moon is making some quite useful aspects today. I mean, it's making three sextiles: sextile Venus, sextile Sun, sextile Mars. Also, the moon is in mutual reception to Jupiter, so the moon is in a good position, and that matters for you, Taurus, because the moon is exalted in your sign, so you can be at the center of things. And if you want to have a high-profile Christmas, I think you can. Obviously, there are always limitations. It can be a day where people are closing down, where it's difficult to get in touch with people. But whatever that group is around you, then I think that you're able to tune into that. And if there is no one around you, well, it doesn't necessarily matter. I think that Taurus, you're able to align with something, beyond yourself, at least beyond the here and now. You're thinking about, how things are going to develop, where you are going to develop, and your imagination might be, encouraging you to think ahead, to think about, what is your life all about? Time goes quickly, and you may be thinking that if you're not careful, you might lose it. You might find that it's too late. I don't want to make you worried or to give you a sense of panic. I think, in fact, it's quite a positive thing to be thinking about the future, thinking about all the opportunities of the future. And so, don't entirely live in the here and now. Do start to think about how you'd like things to be. Now the moon is making sextiles to both Venus and Mars, and so if you've got moon making sextiles to Venus and Mars, that could bode well for relationships over Christmas. So over Christmas, you'll know how to relate. You will, I think, be able to sort of behave yourself, and you're not going to want to do anything to rock the boat. And so, that certainly looks good. But it's probably a good idea, Taurus, if you are distracted to some extent. Okay, if you're on your own, you might be able to align yourself to the future, think about what could be happening over the future. But somehow a negativity might spring into life. Somehow you look at things and you have your concerns. Again, especially if you're alone, if you're not distracted. And you might look at things in one way and you look at things in another way, and you're thinking, well, maybe things aren't quite so good. And then you might find yourself being sort of frustrated. And then you might even think about mortality. Why would you think about mortality over Christmas? I don't want to contradict myself here. I really think it can be a happy, positive day, especially if you're surrounded by other people. But in those quiet moments, perhaps on your own, you could be thinking about mortality. And maybe Christmas is a day which kind of encourages those kinds of thoughts. Because, when we hit Christmas, all those past Christmases that might sort of stretch back decades and decades, to when we were children, they give us an idea of the passing of time. Some people are here, some people are no longer here. And it all comes together on Christmas. And so that might just encourage you to maybe excessively dwell on the past. And perhaps to dwell on your mortality. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it need happen. But it's just something you have to be aware of. And so whatever you're doing over Christmas, it's a good idea to be busy talking to people, busy enjoying yourself. Maybe if you don't want to enjoy yourself, busy doing something you enjoy, something, or busy doing something that's useful. If you have moments of quiet, moments when you're doing nothing, moments when you're not talking to anyone, when you're not focused on anything, those could be the problem times for you. So Taurus, do keep busy, and make sure that you don't allow yourself to dwell on sort of negative things, unless, of course, you enjoy a bit of negativity. Sometimes there can be a perverseness to Christmas. Things can be just too positive for you, and being negative, dwelling on the darker things, may not be so bad. But it depends on who you are. But if you want to be happy and positive, then you've got to fill that space with happiness and positivity, because if there's a vacuum, if there's nothing going on, your mind might drift into areas that might be ever so disturbing. But I don't want to spoil your day. I think Christmas can be fine for you. Gemini. Yeah, it's Christmas. Geminis can have a somewhat perverse view of Christmas Day. You perhaps want to do the opposite. You don't necessarily want to enter into the Christmas spirit. Of course, I'm a Gemini. That's my sun in Gemini. I am not good at entering into the Christmas spirit. I think I probably find Christmas Day to be, rather tedious. Maybe this happens just as one grows older, and maybe it's got nothing to do with me being sun in Gemini. But this Christmas, you are thinking. You're thinking ahead. You're thinking about what you could be doing, what you should be doing, and there may be a feeling that it's all a waste of time. That there are things you really would prefer to be involved in, maybe relating to your ambitions, whatever it is you're trying to get off the ground. And we do have a conjunction between the moon and the north node. So if you've got a moon north node conjunction, the question might be, Gemini, what should you be doing over Christmas, on Christmas Day? And Christmas Day has cultural implications. I mean, you may be watching this and it might mean nothing to you. It might just be an ordinary day, which would be great, because then you can make the most of it, and you can start to tune into whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And I think the moon north node conjunction can be quite ambitious. It can be about you wanting to make the most of the fact that you've got planets in Pisces. Pisces is a sign which in the Gemini horoscope is fairly high profile. It likes to be seen and heard. It likes to be doing something that is future orientated, but not future orientated in a vague way. It's about you having goals and you wanting to move towards your goals. And with the moon conjunct north node, that is the way forward. And of course, you've got the south node in Virgo, and it may well be the case, Gemini, that spending too much time just celebrating Christmas in your home or someone else's home with your family is maybe the wrong thing to be doing. Now, you can't separate the personal from the collective. In the nominally Christian world, Christmas cannot be avoided. I think Christmas is a public holiday, even in India. I think when I was in India, certainly in the early 80s, I remember it was definitely a public holiday. But looking for an extension to one's visa, and the visa official said, why aren't you going home for Christmas? But then I think that was in an area, part of India where there are a lot of Christians, and so Christmas is important, even in India. And so it may be difficult to completely ignore the fact that it is Christmas Day, but I think most Geminis are not going to want to get too sidetracked by the Christmas festivities. It just could seem to be a waste of time. And if you are able to spend some time on something else, something relating to your ambitions, I think it's going to feel especially satisfying. Maybe because you're doing something different, because you're separate from the rest of humanity, or at least you might feel yourself to be separate from the rest of your family. Just a couple of hours, even just 1 hour, just doing something that is future orientated but does relate to your ambitions could just feel really good. You can just feel that you are doing something which relates to the future, and it will continue into Boxing Day tomorrow, because the moon tomorrow is making a conjunction to Saturn. It's making a trine to Jupiter. Again, these are pretty powerful aspects as far as lunar aspects go, and I think that they will enable you to see things through. So I would regard Moon in Pisces as being an opportunity, Gemini, an opportunity to perhaps align yourself to the new year and the challenges of the new year. And in the process, I don't think you have to offend anyone. I mean, the moon in Pisces, it's making it's sextile Venus, sextile the Sun. I think that you can do enough to make other people and your family feel happy, but you don't have to just completely give in to the Christmas spirit. I think that might be a shame if you were to do that, because I think it would be to an extent a waste of time. Cancer. I'm confident, Cancer, that today can be pretty fortunate. We've got the moon in Pisces. Pisces is a great sign for the moon to be in. I mean, Christmas Day is also, it's important. Cancerians can be nostalgic. They remember past Christmases, and to an extent, maybe they want to recreate what was in the past. I mean, it's always difficult to recreate the past, and that can be a very disappointing thing, because time keeps grinding forward. We can't ever put the clock back. We can't put it back 1 second. But so we can try. And if you're trying to create a happy, harmonious Christmas, then I think it's a good chance you'll succeed. I mean, if that's what you want to do, I mean, you may have other things on your mind, but if you're trying to create harmony, not just for yourself, but for other people, and you're wanting to honor the Christmas spirit, then that certainly is something you can do. I mean, Christmas is not just about the material. It's not just about state holidays. There is a spirituality to Christmas. Even from an astronomical point of view, Christmas is a time when the sun's declination is frozen. It seems to be frozen. We are past the longest day, longest day in the southern hemisphere, shortest day in the northern hemisphere, and so Christmas Day is perhaps about some of that sort of unfreezing. Very, very slowly the sun is moving past its peak declination south, and that might be the hours of darkness are receding if you're in the northern hemisphere, slowly increasing if you're in the southern hemisphere, and whatever's going on, that does represent a change. It represents an unfreezing. And Cancer, I think that I think as far as you're concerned, it is positive, and you can mark this change. And I think that you quite possibly know how to have a good time, and at the same time you are able to think about other people and other people's needs and other people's requirements, and it's not so difficult. Looking after other people's needs can take up a lot of your time. You can really sort of go out of your way to do it, and it can be exhausting. But today, with the moon making a sextile to Sun, Venus, and Mars, it's relatively easy. You understand people. You understand what people want. You know how to make people happy, and at the same time, you can be quite an elevating influence. You can move people up sort of to a new level, and maybe that's part of the Christmas spirit, part of the spirituality of the Christmas spirit. So if you want to be seasonal, Cancer, you can be. If you don't want to be seasonal, if Christmas is irrelevant to you, I still think that there can be a real spirituality to the day. As I was just saying, there is an astronomical side to Christmas Day. It's when the sun starts to unfreeze, when its declination does slightly change, and that says something about the natural cycles which we're all in. And if you want to sort of think about the beyond, what your wider role is, and what happens in the afterlife, maybe, or what is going on in that sort of other universe, then it's all there for you. It's all available, and so you might have a sense of real positivity that goes beyond the material world, not getting sidetracked by just things, objects, money. You can definitely move beyond all that. But one thing about today, regardless of whether Christmas is important, you just shouldn't forget that 3 planets are in Capricorn. Sun, Venus, Mars. Now those 3 planets are going to be in Capricorn for some time, but Christmas, it can be a time where things do get more intense, and I think that there is inevitably going to be a relationship emphasis here. I mean, the sun is always in Capricorn, obviously, on Christmas Day, but Venus and Mars can be in different signs. Certainly Mars can be anywhere relative to the sun on Christmas Day from a geocentric view, but still pay attention to other people. And if relationships are important to you, I really do think that it can be a good day because of the lunar aspects, and the moon making sextiles to Venus, Sun, Mars really helps you to get on with other people. And one other thing, the moon conjunct the North Node, there's always a question of what is the right thing to do, what is the right approach. And I think it's important perhaps not to be too cynical, too questioning, because the South Node is in Virgo, and with the the moon conjunct the North Node in Pisces, you might in certain situations respond to the moon being conjunct the North Node in Pisces by manifesting the South Node in Virgo. So there may be moments today when you are tempted to just cut through the imagery, cut through perhaps the religiosity or the fake religiosity of the day, and make some very sort of down-to-earth observations about it all, which might be true, but I don't think you want to necessarily go down that road too far. I don't think so. I think that you should perhaps allow the magic to stay in place, even if deep down you have your doubts. Or what is that doubt? But then you also have to ask, what are those doubts about? What you're looking for, Cancer, perhaps is real spirituality. You're not interested in the commercial gloss of Christmas. I mean, that is a truism. I mean, none of us are particularly impressed by the commercial gloss of Christmas, regardless of our sign. But for you, it may be especially important. And rather than questioning things as they are, you should perhaps be going on your own journey of transcendence, transcending the gloss and finding something real and meaningful. Leo, you want things to happen. I think you do. I think that's your kind of mood. You would like to think that it's not just going to be about staying in one place. You want to be able to take the initiative today. Now, that might not necessarily be easy. Can you really do the first thing that comes to mind? Can you act with power and conviction? Well, not in a way that is spontaneous, but if you're prepared to give it some thought, maybe the answer is yes. It certainly needs some planning if you want to make an impact, if you want to get people to stop what they're doing, if you want to be original. Yeah, it absolutely can happen. But you're gonna have to really prepare your ground. If you just try to be original for the sake of it, spur of a moment, I think that that could fall flat. On the other hand, if you think about what makes you different and why you might want to be different today, especially as it is Christmas Day, how would you go about it? And with sort of planning and preparation, you can present something which is not just different, but is also acceptably different. So if you want to be a real individual today, I think that you really can be, but you do have to make the effort. It's not easy, because if you don't make the effort, you might just stand out in a way that isn't desirable at all. So do work on it. And I think that revolutions require work. They require a lot of work, and that might be something that you just have to get on with. But you certainly don't have to be steamrollered by external events. If you want to do things differently, then I think you very much can. And at the same time, you know how to get people's attention. You come over as being someone who's got something to offer, and the Sun is still on the Venus-Mars midpoint. It's very close to the Venus-Mars midpoint, and so you continue to benefit from having this charisma boost. So because you're charismatic, that means that you can get a lot of attention, and you can get also favorable attention. But you have to put in the necessary preparations. That sounds like a bit of work. Maybe you don't want to put in the work. Maybe you just want to do nothing. That is certainly an option. And some Leos may feel that it's just a complicated day. You could say something, you could do something, you could be original, but what is the point? It's better just to let other people get on with it. And maybe there are things that you're trying to work out, that you're trying to understand, and you can't get any help from other people, maybe because they don't understand either. But if you do want to sort of get to grips with something which may be emotionally complicated, then I think that is an option. You can, and also the Moon is making a sextile to the Sun. Moon sextile Sun, it's always a good aspect, and that means Leo, you can find a sense of undramatic harmony if that's what you feel you need. So you don't have to be a revolutionary. It's a choice. If you want to be different, you can be different. Of course, you've got to prepare the ground, but that is one possibility. Yeah, and another possibility is just accepting the situation, perhaps being quite secretive about your own thoughts. Your own thoughts might seem powerful, might seem meaningful, so meaningful that perhaps they can't always be articulated. And in that sense, it might be quite a complicated Christmas. Assuming you're celebrating Christmas, maybe just a complicated Thursday. But just because something is complicated doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that you can see the different levels at which things are going on, and you're also able to see the role of human emotion. And people do have strong feelings. They might deny that they have strong feelings, but those feelings exist, and you also have a good understanding of other people's subjectivity. People can claim to be objective, but people are motivated by the way they feel, and they're motivated by the past. And of course, if you are celebrating Christmas can be a highly emotional day when powerful feelings can come out of the woodwork. And I think as far as you're concerned, that's probably not something that you want to get strongly involved with. I think it's probably enough to be aware that there are powerful feelings out there without necessarily playing around with them, without actually having to experience their full force. And so that might be a good reason why you want to keep some distance, certainly keep some emotional distance. But just because you're keeping an emotional distance doesn't mean you're not emotional. I think actually today, Leo, your emotions are very powerful. Virgo. Perhaps, Virgo, you should think about what is needed, what is required of you. Regardless of whether or not you're celebrating Christmas, you have to think about other people. You have to perhaps think about service. That's what they say about Virgo, isn't it? It's a service orientated sign, where you think about what you can do for other people. Mother Teresa was a Virgo. I mean, Mother Teresa is not exactly my favorite person, but still, she certainly encapsulates that Virgo stereotype, service to other people. And it might just be there is an aspect of Christmas which is about doing stuff for other people, maybe preparing things, doing things which probably, strictly speaking, another person could do, but maybe they won't do a good job of it. Maybe you just have to be aware of other people's needs. It doesn't mean to say that you have to give in to other people's needs, but you certainly have to know what they are, and you have to make a special effort to make sure that you understand what people want, even if you're not prepared to give it to them. I mean, I think that is the important point. So it matters that you are quite sensitive to what is, to everything that's going on around you. But the problem about being too sensitive is that you might pick up on too much, and you might exaggerate, and you might regard something as being more serious than it actually is. And this Christmas, Virgo, you might feel that in a sort of in the interpersonal department, there is something missing. I'm not necessarily talking about close relationships, but just if you're with other people, you can go through the motions, you can do your bit, but something is being held back. It's not you holding anything back. I think it might be other people. Other people are not being completely forthcoming, and so on paper it can be a successful Christmas or just a successful day, but you just know that something is missing. And as far as what is missing, it's that human element. Maybe there's just a bit of spontaneity missing, which is kind of surprising with the moon being in Pisces. I mean, the moon in Pisces, that's a great place for the moon to be in. And moon is in mutual reception to Jupiter. You can certainly do what's expected of you. You can go through all the motions. But, even then, something isn't quite there. Now, it could be, Virgo, that you are holding something back, that You want to do your bit, you want to do what's expected of you, but you're not fully able to give everything. And you are, looking after your own needs and your own boundaries, and maybe that's the right thing to do. I mean, you don't want to completely go overboard, but probably, Virgo, the more listening you can do, you don't have to, the better, and you don't have to completely dump your own material onto other people, because if it becomes about you, then really nothing much can happen. It is about what other people want today. And again, you have to decide whether or not you want to give it. You can give some of it, but of course not all of it. So it's a day where everything seems to be fine. Probably everything is in the right place. It's helped by the fact that you just do a good job. You do what's expected of you. But even then, it just does seem that something is missing. And so the advice there might be just not to have high expectations, and perhaps to remember, under it all, it's just another Thursday. Libra. There are probably things that you feel obliged to do. I mean, that can often be the case, isn't it, with Christmas? Everyone has their role, and it may be always like that. So you could say, I'm not saying anything you don't know, but it could be particularly important this Christmas. You are thinking about the way things should be, the way things should be unfolding, where the obligations lie. And I think, Libra, you're pretty aware of your own obligations and what you need to do, what you need to sort out, what your own preparations are. And again, that needn't have anything to do with Christmas. It could just be about today, about Thursday, Friday, while the moon is moving through Pisces. Indeed, the moon tomorrow on the 26th makes a conjunction to Saturn. But your job is perhaps just to, as far as is possible, make sense of things and not to allow things to get out of control. And you can be, a controlling influence. You can just make sure that everything stays on the rails, that the chaos is avoided. It can be a chaotic time, but I think that you understand the chaos, but you also know what is needed to make sure that it doesn't completely get out of hand. Now, as far as your overall attitude is concerned, what are you feeling deep down? Many Librans will have an underlying negativity. On the surface, you might seem to be your normal, friendly Libran self, but deep down, you have your worries and you have your concerns. It's absolutely natural to have worries and concerns, over Christmas, and you may feel that perhaps things are just a little bit slower than they should be. There may be moments over Christmas where you do feel frustrated, and additionally, you might be thinking about how things could go wrong, and that might lead to sort of an underlying negativity. Maybe you don't express this negativity, but it is real. You're thinking about, you are thinking about what could go wrong. You're thinking about also how everything is finite. Nothing lasts forever. You can try to keep things going, but in the end, they have to stop. Everything has to stop. The earth has to stop. And when you've got something like Christmas, which is supposed to be a happy day, it's easy to flip into the opposite, to be aware of some kind of anti-Christmas, a Christmas which reminds you of one's limits, and the fact that things are coming to an end, the fact that as one Christmas morphs into another, one is moving towards the end. So you could go down a negative flight. It's absolutely possible. Is that a good thing? Well, it's probably not a good thing unless you're being quite philosophical about it. I don't think that today should be particularly philosophical, but left to your own devices, Libra, this sort of underlying negativity, it could come out into the open. So what do you do with that? Well, it may be that there's something that you need to really focus on. So you're feeling agitated, you're feeling negative perhaps because there's unfinished business or something you need to do to get things out of your system. So I don't know what the weather is like where you are. I mean, here in Washington State, it just seems to be non-stop raining. I don't know whether it's raining today. Well, of course, I'm doing this recording on Christmas Eve, but I haven't looked at the weather for Christmas Day. But there may be merit, Libra, in taking exercise today. You've got to consider your medical limitations. I'm not advocating that you do anything but exhaust yourself. I don't want you to do yourself an injury, but maybe there is some excess energy that just needs to be worked off, as soon as possible. Because if that energy is just left sort of hanging around, then it could really bring you down. And so perhaps every now and then you need to go on a walk or exercise, bicycle, whatever it takes, or drumming if you're into drumming. That would be a way of using this excess energy. So you don't allow things to build up. I think that's going to be very important today, Libra. Scorpio. Moon is in Pisces. It's making sextile aspects to Sun, Venus, Mars. I think that's good. I mean, that's pretty fortunate, and I think that does allow you to enter into the spirit of things. You can be a happy, enthusiastic, warm person, and it's really very straightforward. You know what to say, you know what to do, and so if you want a happy Christmas, I think you can have a happy Christmas, and you even have the opportunity to make other people's Christmases happy if you're around, and it's perhaps because you have a positive approach, and additionally you have a great sense of what you can do. It can be this Christmas is supposed to be about other people, very often. What your family want, what other people want, making other people happy. Yeah, you can certainly make other people happy. But if you want to be most effective, you might have to bring something to the table. And by bring something to the table, it's about being quite open about who you are, what you can do, what your special talents are. It's not just about just following other people's lead and making suggestions, and being prepared to take the initiative. And if you can do that, I think that is going to be very much appreciated. And additionally, you're not necessarily going to be always taking yourself too seriously. I think that there is maybe a playful side to Scorpio. Is there a playful side to Scorpio? I mean, Scorpio is not a sign that is known to be playful. That's not a word that you would normally use to describe playful. When you're learning astrology, you have all these keywords for the 12 signs. You have like, I don't know, initiative for Aries, or consolidation for Taurus, or discernment for Virgo. When it comes to Scorpio, Playful? No, that's not a word you would normally associate with Scorpio. But you can be playful today. You have a sense of humour, and you can show this sense of humour. And I think that you can relax and maybe make other people laugh, and you're not necessarily going to take anything too seriously. Though one thing, Scorpio, is that you are an intense sign. You feel other people's pain, and you can feel other people's pain at a distance. And if you see injustice, that bothers you. And Christmas is often a time when people think about injustice. There's a lot of charity. You're supposed to give money to charity. You're supposed to think about people who are less fortunate than yourself, and that might say something about what's coming through your door. And maybe it's something in your community. When people want help over Christmas. I don't know, like everywhere in America, here, people are homeless, and so people start to think about the needs of the homeless, over Christmas, because it's cold in the northern hemisphere, and people shouldn't be homeless. They shouldn't be starving over Christmas. And Scorpio, I think that sense of compassion, not necessarily for the homeless, it may be for someone else, is quite strong today. And that compassion doesn't know any borders. You just know that there are people out there who are less fortunate than yourself, and that does maybe give you a sense of tragedy. Again, not your tragedy. It may be someone else's tragedy. It may be the tragedy of a larger group of people, and you are aware of that, and you are quite capable of transmitting it as well. And you can transmit that, with passion. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you can be playful and creative, and you can enjoy yourself, and you can help other people enjoy themselves. But you do it in a way that isn't mindless. You don't forget the suffering of other people, and that makes you a mature and well-rounded person, I would have said, because you are connected. So in that sense, I think that you can have a good Christmas, maybe just a good Thursday, and where you really demonstrate that you're not forgetting about people who are less fortunate than yourself. Sagittarius. Christmas is, of course, close to the solstice, and from a northern hemisphere perspective, well, of course, the solstice is when it's close to is the shortest day, when you want to sort of think about really your roots, things happening in the darkness. And even if you're in the southern hemisphere, even if you're in Australia or New Zealand or South Africa, and it's pretty much the longest day, still, Sagittarius, you want to get to the roots of the matter. You don't want to be taking too many risks. You really want to get into the spirit of the day, and part of the Christmas spirit is isolation. We forget that isolation is a Christmas concept, and isolation is not necessarily a bad thing. It's about thinking about who you are, what you are, and how you are different from other people. And the fact that you cannot be with other people all the time, particularly if they are strangers. Now, it could be isolation within a family unit or some other closely knit social unit, and that might just be your approach. how you are thinking about the overall situation, and maybe also you need time to reflect, and you cannot reflect if you are adopting a high profile, and if you're in the middle of everything. No, you can't reflect at all. You're just overwhelmed by whatever is happening in the world, and it's not really something that you want to engage in. And so, Sagittarius, do think about where your strengths lie, and I think that your strengths lie, in your own home, where you feel comfortable, where you feel safe. And it's not a Christmas, I don't think, for visiting people. There might be pressure to visit people, but I think that would be that should ideally be avoided, and you have to instead perhaps think about your own priorities. And I know it's supposed to be a Christmas day, but it's also just another Thursday, and it being just another Thursday, some Sagittarians might start to really pick up on the Capricorn planets. Capricorn is an earth sign, can be connected with money and the material side of things, and so you might feel that you have to consider something of a financial nature, even though it is Christmas. Somehow you're aware of the price of things, what has been spent, perhaps also being aware of what other people have spent. And okay, that's looking at it from a negative perspective, but the moon is making a sextile. The moon is making sextile aspects to Venus, Sun, Mars, and so even though it is Christmas, it's possible that you have some insights. You have some insights about the way you're spending money, and perhaps how you're going to be spending money in the future. And these insights can be powerful, and you may make some decisions about what you're going to do with money next. And you can show a certain amount of talent, and also you can also be sensible. So if you have any financial resolutions today, and again, I know that normally one doesn't associate Christmas Day with financial resolutions, but I think there could be some resolutions here. That you feel that at some material level you just want to sort something out and make sure that everything is properly organized in future. So if you make a resolution, I think that there is a good chance that you can actually stick to that resolution, especially as these Capricorn planets, Sun, Venus, Mars, they're going to be in Capricorn for a long time, and well, until sort of middle late January. So you've got plenty of time to really understand what is needed in a financial sense. Another thing, Sagittarius, don't be shy about what you can do. Even though you're not in the mood for revealing things, there are some things that just may be revealed through your own actions. People just observe your behavior. And yet, when people do observe your behavior, if there's anyone around you, they do notice things. They notice that you've got these particular skills that you maybe you don't normally show, but it's quite obvious. Even if you're being humble and you're being discreet and you're not trying to show off, it's still obvious that there are certain things you do very well, and it's important you're not shy about them, because people need to know. I mean, you don't want to keep everything secret, and there just might be something that you've been working on that now might be the time to start to reveal. It's not like you have to talk about it, it's just you demonstrate it through what you do. Capricorn. We have, of course, 3 planets in Capricorn. I mean, the Sun is always in Capricorn on Christmas Day, but Venus and Mars are not always here. And so, with 3 planets in Capricorn, and the Moon in Pisces, the Moon making sextiles to these Capricorn planets, that does mean that this Thursday is going to be a time when you can be yourself. You can also articulate who you are. People are going to understand, Capricorn, what you are all about. And if there's anything you want to say, if anything you want to communicate, I think, Capricorn, you're going to be able to do it very well. And people are going to listen. People who are around, of course, if it's Christmas Day, there may not be so many people around, but those that are around, they will get the message. And I think overall, Capricorn, you're going to feel good about yourself, and I think that other people will feel pretty good about themselves, and you're going to help, because I think that things are moving for you, and you do come over as being very connected, and not much jars about you. I don't think anything jars about you. You do the right things, and additionally, you can use those Capricorn planets to make changes, to make plans. So if there are slow periods during a day when no one knows what to do, then you can take the initiative. You can say, well, let's do this. And if you're clear about what you want, then I think just people will follow your lead. So this Christmas, you might find yourself having to adopt a bit of a leadership role. It's because you can do it, because you can present yourself very well. And additionally, Capricorn, you're just going to know how to relate. You're going to be able to say the right things. You're going to be pleasant. Other people, and other people are going to like you. And so I think that you are an asset today, and I think that you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. And if there's anything you don't want to do, it's not about saying no. It's not about being discouraging. It's just simply about coming up with an alternative. So that is the right approach. So if anyone says something you disagree with, you don't say, no, that's a bad idea. Come up with another idea. I think that you'll be able to present your ideas and your plans, very, very effectively, and people will listen, and they'll probably come to the conclusion that your way is the right way. So I'm thinking it's going to be a good Thursday, and if you're celebrating Christmas, I think it should be a pretty good Christmas where you are, very much going to be in control. Aquarius. You don't have to be at the center of things. I mean, Christmas, for the average Aquarius, may be a bit of a pain. I mean, you like to do things your own way. You like to be ever so slightly detached. And so in that spirit, you may just feel that, you want to be at a distance. And I think if you want to be at a distance to everything, if you don't want to be directly involved, then that's absolutely fine. You don't have to be the life and soul of the party. And if you've got other things you want to do, then I think that you very much can do them. And many Aquarians will think that you'll think that there are things that you absolutely want to do, maybe even have to do, but may have nothing to do with Christmas. Christmas is just one cultural perspective, and if there's something important that needs to be done, then Aquarius, I would suggest that you go ahead and just do it, and there's no need to talk about it. In fact, you could argue, Aquarius, that the less said the better. If you are talking about your plans, about what you want to do, well, you are maybe inviting criticism, or you just might not get much encouragement. But you don't need encouragement, because I do think that today is, to a great extent, about what you want to do. And if you want to do something, then you can do it. And if you want to ignore another person's promptings, then yeah, again, you can, I think, without causing offence. And even if you are involved with something, I think that in most cases you're going to be on the periphery. You're not going to want to be right at the centre, and that's your role. Different people have different roles at different times, and sometimes we're not initiators. And if you want an initiator, well, someone else can take the initiative. Someone else can have wonderful ideas. But okay, you might have your wonderful ideas, but I think in most cases you probably want to keep them to yourselves. Now, we do have a lot of planets in Pisces. Well, we've got Moon, Saturn, and Neptune in Pisces, and the North Node, which is quite a lot of planets in Pisces to an extent. I mean, we've also got a lot of planets in Capricorn, but we do have Moon in Pisces. It's making sextile aspects to Venus, Mars, and the Sun, and because of those aspects, that does give a different view of the day, which may have nothing to do with Christmas. It may be things that you want to organize, you might want to get together, and you might find yourself thinking about the future, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening next week, next year. How are you going to position yourself? You can't help it. I mean, you would perhaps like to enter into the spirit of the day, but not entirely. For example, that bills have to be paid. You're perhaps thinking about your income. You're thinking about money. Is the financial situation good enough? Are improvements needed? And if you are thinking like that, in the first instance, that can be worrying. But if you keep thinking, in a constructive way, then Aquarius, I think you can start to have some really quite good ideas about what needs to be done. And these are ideas which allow you to really demonstrate particular skills that you might have. So if you make decisions today, especially over money, then these decisions might be really very sensible decisions, and in the near future you'll have an opportunity to turn these decisions into real practice. And I think that if you actually act on what you decide, then I think that there could be some very real benefits. Pisces. It's all happening. The moon is in Pisces. Its moon is in your sign, and the moon is in mutual reception to Jupiter. Moon and Jupiter are in each other's signs, and what more can you want? It's Christmas Day. Having the moon in Pisces means that if you so wish, you can be very Christmassy. You can be very responsive to other people and their needs, and at the same time, you can be very clear about your own needs. I mean, we all have needs. There are things that you want, there are things you want to do, and also there are things that you don't want to do. And you can be very, very clear about all of that. But I don't think that you're going to want to be too pushy. And that's because there is a certain flexibility to you right now, especially with the moon in Pisces. Okay, the moon does eventually make a conjunction to Saturn, but that's not until tomorrow. What we have right now is the moon making sextiles to those Capricorn planets, Venus, Sun, and Mars, and that allows you to be friendly, warm up to a point. I mean, I know that Pisces has a reputation for being an emotional sign, but that doesn't mean that you have to be super warm. I think that there is a practicality to those sextile aspects. I mean, they are in Capricorn, so you are able to think about what is possible and what is practical. And that's perhaps a great thing about that sextile. You can do stuff which is fun, but you also have a good understanding of your limits, and you also understand how things can go wrong. So I think it's important, Pisces, that you make sure that whatever's happening today, you have the last word. You let everyone have their say, but in the end, how things should be. You know how things could go wrong, and with the moon conjunct the North Node, it's okay to be assertive, to be clear about what is acceptable, and what you approve of and what you want to do, which is what I mean by you having the last word. And you have the last word, and I don't think anyone minds. And it's possible, Pisces, that if people are making decisions that you don't approve of, you don't necessarily have to disagree. You don't have to say no. When it comes to actually putting these decisions into practice, you can make sure that it goes your way anyway. So you can perhaps ignore other people's wishes in a roundabout kind of way, and they won't even know they're being ignored, and you can just sort of engineer things so that it does all happen your way. And it's certainly not a time to just be doing what you're told, following the crowd, forgetting your own needs. It is absolutely not that kind of day. It is your Christmas, or maybe it's just your Thursday if Christmas isn't important to you, because I think that it should be a pretty good day. Don't forget that the moon is also in mutual reception to Jupiter. Moon and Jupiter are in each other's signs, and the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. Okay, that trine to Jupiter is not exact until tomorrow, but it's there. It's getting stronger, and so you could say that tomorrow, what's tomorrow? Friday, Boxing Day, is really a continuation of today. I mean, astrologically, it's a continuation of today, and so what you start today, you can see through tomorrow. And I think that you can see through, with great success, and you can give everything a degree of, real permanence. And I don't think I've got anything more to say about the 12 signs. So it's time to move to the I Ching. So I ask the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 38. Don't panic. Opposition. Doesn't sound great, but don't worry, it's not as bad as it looks. So if we're talking about opposition, this might say something about how the day starts. I understand for many of you, Christmas Day is important. It can be about families. It can be about enjoying yourself. It can be about everyone getting on with each other. And then you get this hexagram opposition. And on the face of it, opposition is about not getting on with people. It's about feeling that one is at odds with everyone. It's you against them. There is a conflict. There is potentially a struggle. So that's just your attitude going into Christmas. And to begin with, the evidence seems to support that. You see these people you have to deal with over Christmas. Okay, maybe you don't have to deal with anyone over Christmas. It depends on your Christmas. But you can see that there are a lot of conflicts potentially going on. There are disagreements, and you might just be thinking, well, wouldn't it be better if you just spent Christmas just alone? That just avoids the problem. Alone, not just in a face-to-face way, but alone in terms of social media, email, just not having to worry about other people, because where there's a person, there's a conflict. So that's how it all starts. But we do have the fourth and the fifth line moving. Sorry, the fifth and the sixth line moving. So, fifth line moving. What's that about? Well, the fifth and the sixth line, in both cases, have a similar message. And the fifth and sixth line can be about misinterpreting someone or having an overly negative view. And, it seems that as far as getting on with people are concerned, the first attempt to get on with another person is not necessarily going to be easy. The fifth line talks about a wrapping. So you see someone, you want to talk to them, you want to get on with them, you immediately form an impression. Why do you form an impression? Well, it's based on surface appearances, and the surface appearances that other people demonstrate, or maybe how other people are dressed, what they're saying, what they're not saying, is not favorable. People are not projecting them well. So your initial inclination is to think this is not someone you want to talk to. Well, even if you know them very well, it just seems difficult. It seems on the surface to be a tense Christmas. But if you try, as soon as the wrappings fall away and you start to realize who you are actually talking to, you see the real person, then things start to move. They move very quickly. And it's likewise with the sixth line. The sixth line moving, well, it talks about people who seem dreadful. It talks about people you think they're robbers. They think you're trying to steal your money, whatever. And then you realize they're not robbers at all. So I think that there is a real possibility here that you are overly negative about the people you have to meet over the course of the day. And, you might think they're up to no good. You might think they're boring. You might think that they're of no help. But as soon as you try, as soon as you start to engage with people, you realize that, things are fine. And that applies to your family as well. So just because the day starts off, I won't say badly, but starts off with you having a rather dim view of things, you not being in the Christmas spirit, just because it starts off like that doesn't mean that it's going to end like that. And so that's positive. And then we have this hexagram opposition. It does move to a second hexagram, and the hexagram it moves to is hexagram number 58, which is the joyous. And I think that there is a case for just seeing this hexagram, at face value. I mean, in the Wilhelm translation, just describes it as the joyous. It's the lake over lake. You'd see these top three lines are repeated in the bottom three lines. You've got these two trigrams represent the lake. They're very watery. And this is not the abyss. I mean, the I Ching refers to water in different ways. I mean, the abyss can be a problem. This is not the abyss. It is a lake. And when you're thinking about the lake and you're thinking about the title, The Joyous, that's about emotions flowing. Things do move. Things really start to work. People can enjoy themselves. It is the joyous. And so this might suggest that, we're able to really tune into the Pisces energy. And I think that this hexagram, the joyous, it really is in accord with the fact that Christmas Day got Moon in Pisces, making sextiles to Sun and Venus and Mars. So that means that don't be fooled by first impressions. I think the day probably gets better as it goes along. Though with the joyous, you must be careful that you don't get completely wrapped up in it. You don't want to get carried away by too much enjoyment. You've got to know your limits. You've got to hold firm if things are going too far. But I don't want to be negative for the sake of it. I think that it's a Christmas which starts in a way that seems underwhelming, where you have a lot of doubts about the people you have to deal with. But, in the end, you get over these doubts and you realize that there are people out there that, people can be trusted. They're not going to steal your money when you're not talking about robbers. And if you give people a chance and if you look beyond appearances, then I think that you could be pleasantly surprised. And finally, I want to talk about Hades and the Epstein thing. I mean, the Epstein thing, I haven't really got into it in great detail, but I think that the basic theme is is pretty clear. Trump had had said in his election campaign that one of the things that were going to happen with a Trump presidency, that all of the Epstein files are going to be released. After all, we are in a time where we are flooded with sort of conspiracy theories, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories around Epstein and all the sort of important, famous, influential people he's associated with. What is being hidden? So it's kind of natural that people would expect someone like Trump and Trump's base, to want as much to be released as possible. Then, of course, the reality is that Trump has been holding back on things, and he hasn't wanted all these files to be released. So the question is, what is he hiding? And now we're seeing pictures of Trump in terms of the Epstein files, and of course, the reality is that the issue is always the cover-up, isn't it? It's the action itself is not what causes the damage. It's always the cover-up, isn't it? I mean, I think that's like with Watergate. I mean, Nixon. I don't know. But I think if Nixon had just come clean, he probably wouldn't have had to have resigned. Likewise, with the Epstein thing, if Trump had just said, "Let's just release the whole thing. If he comes over badly, who cares? I mean, he's a Teflon president." I know Reagan was the original Teflon president, but anyway, Trump just decided to hold things up, and his administration wanted to not release everything, and now they've been released, and we see heavy redaction. So it's all a bit of a mess, and it does make me think about Hades, and Hades is a hypothetical planet. When I say hypothetical, it doesn't exist. It was something that was reverse engineered by Alfred Witte at the beginning of the 20th century, I think during the First World War, and so he created 8 hypothetical planets. But in my experience, of all the 8 hypothetical planets, Hades seems to work better than the other 8. It is quite powerful. I have no idea how it works. Well, I do have an idea how it works, but I don't. That's not something I want to discuss right now. I've got a very clear idea about how Hades works, but I just feel that that's not something I want to talk about at the moment. Maybe when I have 100,000 subscribers, I'll start to talk about how Hades works. I mean, that's the thing about subscribers. I mean, I've got 12,000 subscribers at the moment, which is good, but it's slow. But I think that when you haven't got so many subscribers, that kind of makes you feel you have to hold back on things. Not just hold back on things about astrology and how astrology works, but it's also perhaps about one's own material. Somehow it seems easier to embarrass yourself in front of 100,000 people than to embarrass yourself in front of 12,000 people. Maybe that's just my logic anyway. As far as Trump and Epstein is concerned, I think we do need to start to look at Trump's chart first. I think that is a good starting point. So let's look at Trump's chart, and let's look at Hades. So here's Donald Trump's chart, a chart that obviously I spend a lot of time looking at. I look at Trump's chart more than any other chart, and I am going to just put on the hypotheticals. So this chart is about to become a bit of a mess when I add hypotheticals. So there it is. So a lot more planets being put on. Now I want to just make this as big as possible so that you can see the Hades glyph. You see, there's Hades. It's sort of a circle with a cross through it. I mean, the cross, I'm assuming, relates to cemeteries, that it is a planet of death. It certainly can be associated with death. I mean, it's not just about death. I mean, in the underworld, it's also about garbage, things that are decaying. And it's about criminality, and it's about sleaze. I mean, I talked about sleaze quite recently in relationship to the Mars-Neptune square, because we just had a Mars-Neptune square. But I think that there is a sort of a Mars-Neptune feel to Hades in terms of sleaze, just being attracted to things which are just sordid. And there is a sordid side to Hades. And this might be reflected if you have Hades strongly placed in your horoscope. So as far as Trump is concerned, he's got his Hades at 1133 Cancer. And when you're using Hades, any of the hypothetical planets, it's very important to use very tight orbs, not 8-degree orbs. You should use 1-degree orb, maybe 1.5 degrees, no more than 1.5 degrees. Yeah, ideally 1 degree is now, by the way, that's Trump's, that's not Trump's chart, that is his solar arc directed chart, sorry. So, sorry, his Hades is at 25 Aries. So forgive me for that. So, 1-degree orb. So, looking at Trump's Hades, I just think it's really interesting that Trump has Hades square his Venus. Again, we have to use very tight orbs on this, and the orb on the square between Hades and Venus is 20 arc minutes. So it's really very tight. And so Venus represents relationships. It also represents women in general, and how he treats women and what he gets involved with. And of course, this has always been a vulnerability for Trump. Trump, in terms of what he's said about women and about his behaviour towards women, has been known to be pretty crude. I'm not going to quote from him, but I think it's well known what he has said. And I should make it clear, this is not necessarily a reflection on Trump's ability to be a president. Everything one says about Trump and his attitude to women is certainly shared by John F. Kennedy and Bill Clinton. So many people regard John F. Kennedy as one of America's greatest presidents. I mean, I doubt that. I'm not convinced that John F. Kennedy was one of America's greatest presidents, but people think fondly of John F. Kennedy, and Kennedy's treatment of women was probably far worse than anything Trump has done. And then, of course, you got Clinton. So this is not a reflection on Trump's politics, neither in a good or a bad sense. But so with Trump, Venus, Hades, there is a sordidness here to Trump, like it or not, and so it's kind of not surprising that with these Epstein files that Trump is in the center of things. There's always been this talk about how Trump has on many occasions flew in Epstein's private jet. What did the story go? One story I read was in his private jet, along with a 20-year-old woman. What was exactly going on here, and of course we know it's not just about Epstein. So his behaviour it's not like Trump was just tempted off the path by Epstein. We know we had the whole Stormy Daniels thing where he was getting involved with Stormy Daniels just after Melania had given birth to Barron. I mean, that is Venus. That is Venus square Hades, and it's really coming out. And we also note that Hades is square Saturn. Now, I just said that you should use very tight orbs, 1 degree, and I stick to that. But when you're looking at midpoints, these kind of things, you've got to look at the overall picture. And the point is that Trump's Venus is conjunct Saturn. Now, if you are a traditionalist and you don't see any point in Hades, you could argue that Venus conjunct Saturn tells you everything you need to know without needing to look at Hades. Venus and Saturn can be a sordid conjunction. It really can be. I mean, Venus Saturn as a pair is often associated with prostitution because there is something transactional about it, and Saturn can make things sordid. That is a way in which Saturn can work. And so you could say, well, Saturn is in its detriment. I mean, Saturn rules Capricorn, and so it really is messing up Venus. And so Venus conjunct Saturn could represent someone who mistreats women, who treats the women in his life badly, the kind of person who disrespects Melania after she's just given birth, and he's going off and playing around with Stormy Daniels. That is Venus Saturn. But Hades sort of intensifies it, I think, and so it kind of doesn't tell us anything that we don't absolutely know, but it just makes it more extreme. And if we want to know more about Hades, Hades is on the Venus-Saturn midpoint. So the Venus-Saturn midpoint is at around 2440 Cancer, and Hades is square the Venus-Saturn midpoint. And so Hades is telling us more about that Venus-Saturn midpoint. Now, this isn't just some random midpoint. I think when you're using midpoints, you have to have a system, and you have to work out realize that some midpoints are going to be more important than others. I think that Hades square the Venus-Saturn midpoint is going to be particularly important. Now, Alfred Witter talks about Hades on the Venus-Saturn midpoint in his Rules of Planetary Pictures. So if you look up Venus and Saturn, if you look up Venus and Saturn, and you look up Hades on a Venus-Saturn midpoint, it says, to be impoverished, confined love through conditions and inclinations, misalliance. I think that that says something. It doesn't actually give the full quality of Hades on the Venus-Saturn midpoint, but I think that if maybe Hades is a point which does relate to sordidness, and where is that sordidness manifesting? Well, it could be in terms of Venus-Saturn. I think it does say that Hades on the Venus-Saturn midpoint, it does talk about a vulnerability that Donald Trump does have, and so a further question is, why now? I'm going to be looking at a couple of other charts in a moment. I'm going to look at Epstein, and I'm also going to look at Ghislaine Maxwell. But as far as Trump is concerned, there is this question of solar arc directions. So as far as his solar arc directions are concerned, so here are his solar arc directions. So, he's 79. Well, it's going to be 80 next birthday, isn't he? And so we move all the planets, around 79 degrees, and we just see if there are any tie-ups there. And so with Trump, his let me do that again, because I need to make sure that you can see his that you can see his hypothetical planets. This program doesn't automatically do it, so let me just do that again. Sorry about that. So we're going to put Trump on the inner wheel. We're going to put his outer wheel. Outer wheel will put his solar arc directions, and we want to see the hypotheticals, so we will put the hypotheticals up there. So, so if we look at his solar arc directed Hades, getting a bit obscure here maybe, but his solar arc directed Hades is, it's moved, approximately sort of 80 degrees. There it is at 1133 Cancer. So his solar arc directed Hades is moving towards a semi-square with his Mars. This is important. In midpoint astrology, using the Uranian system or the Ebertin system, then the 45-degree aspects matter. So he's got Hades on his Mars. So Hades on his Mars. Well, Mars can be about the way he asserts himself. So Hades on his Mars, that might be a warning about his foreign policy. It might be a warning about how he gets anger, how he uses his anger. But it's also happening at the same time as we have, as we've got all this Epstein stuff going on. And it seems to me that this could potentially put him in quite a dark place. And it's not about the precise nature of the revelations. It's more about how he responds. And I think that Trump has to be very careful about how he responds to this kind of thing. Again, it's not just about Epstein, but I think that a lot of his responses could be unfortunate. And I think that this solar arc directed Hades could be causing a lot of problems. And additionally, we have his sun at 9 degrees 4 minutes Virgo. So his progressed sun at 9 degrees 4 minutes Virgo. So what that means is that in the next year, his progressed sun is getting closer and closer to the sesquiquadrate with Hades. So right now, it's his progressed sun has just crossed the semi-square with his Saturn. So his progressed sun has made a semi-square to his Saturn. It is now moving towards a semi-square with his Venus, and also a sesquiquadrate with his Saturn, with his Hades. So I think it is likely, with these Epstein revelations, that it could just get more and more. It's not necessarily just a one-week wonder. I think that this could go on for the next year, past the midterms, into next year, as the progressed sun does get closer to Hades, because the exact transit to Hades, the exact direction to Hades, doesn't happen until the beginning of 2027. So that could be a theme for the Trump presidency. So this is why perhaps I'm talking about the Epstein files. Why perhaps they are so important. I mean, I think they are not going to go away. At least his Trump's solar arc directions would seem to indicate this. So continuing on this theme of Hades, I want to look at the horoscope of Jeffrey Epstein. So here is Jeffrey Epstein. And the interesting thing about Jeffrey Epstein, or one of the interesting things about Jeffrey Epstein, is that he was born on January the 20th. And the thing about January the 20th is the day that American presidents get inaugurated. So perhaps being born on January the 20th gives him access to American presidents just because of the day he's born, because he's got the sun. Okay, he's got the sun in Aquarius, a sun early Aquarius, and he was born at sort of 6:15 a.m. So that means let me get this right. He was born 5 hours and 45 minutes before Eisenhower was inaugurated. So Eisenhower was inaugurated, I don't think it was a Sunday. Let me just check. if it was if you don't have inaugurations on a Sunday, by the way. So if we look at the date on which Eisenhower was inaugurated, January the 20th. January the 20th, 1953 was a Tuesday. So he was born on the day of Eisenhower's inauguration, and that kind of gives him perhaps a link to the presidency. And of course, we know that two presidents, Bill Clinton and Trump, have been associated with Epstein. Of course, so you've got those pictures that have just come out of Clinton, in a hot tub with some redacted female next to him. So that's Epstein. That's his sun in Aquarius, and his sun in Aquarius is square. It's square Hades. So he's got an exact Sun Hades square in his chart. And so, exact. I mean, he's got a sun at 0 degrees 7 Aquarius, Hades at 0 degrees 1 Taurus, and it's just linked with the inauguration of presidents. It's what happens. And so, inevitably, you could say he is influential. And if you look at if you look at his chart, one really interesting thing about Epstein's chart is that he's got an exact Venus-Mars conjunction at 16 Pisces, and that tells us perhaps something about Jeffrey Epstein's obsession with sex. It seems to be all about sex, and it seems to have completely defined him. And his obsession with sex has just I don't know. Obsession with a particular kind of sex with a particular kind of person, and so that's something that is kind of linked to Donald Trump's inauguration chart. Remember that Epstein's Venus-Mars conjunction is at 16 Pisces. Here is the inauguration of Donald Trump, and there's a Venus-Saturn conjunction in Trump's chart. And I think, I just mentioned the fact that I believe that this Epstein thing is just not going to go away. It's going to dominate his presidency. And we can see why it's going to dominate his presidency. Because when Donald Trump was inaugurated, there was a Venus-Saturn conjunction. Donald Trump has a Venus-Saturn conjunction in his own chart. Furthermore, this Venus-Saturn conjunction is conjunct the Venus-Mars conjunction at 16 Pisces, which is in Epstein's horoscope. So it's not going away, and so that's Epstein's chart, and I think that sun square Saturn is just so. That Sun square Hades just tells us so much. And then there is Ghislaine Maxwell's horoscope, and so here's Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's her chart with Hades included, and Ghislaine Maxwell, she has her midheaven at 8 degrees 35 Aquarius, and she has Hades square her midheaven. And that Hades square her midheaven, well, the MC-IC axis it is the parental axis, and it seems very likely that from a psychological perspective, Ghislaine Maxwell was really overwhelmed by her father. I mean, Robert Maxwell was this incredibly powerful, domineering figure, and she was his favorite daughter, favorite child, and having Hades on her midheaven, on the parental axis, that just says something about her father. I mean, her mother was very different. I think her mother was sort of quite intellectual. She wrote books, and I think but it's maybe that says something about Jupiter on the midheaven. I don't know, but I mean when you're looking at a chart, you see the midheaven as being a mother, and I see as a father. But whichever way you look at it, Hades was square her IC, and so if she's looking for a parental figure, maybe you can see why she was attracted to Jeffrey Epstein. a parental figure who has this capacity for being disreputable and immoral. Epstein, she saw something of her father in it. I don't think that Epstein is as sort of in a way interesting as her father. I mean, her father, Robert Maxwell, was a fascinating person. He was a war hero. He won the Military Cross. He came from Czechoslovakia. He was the bouncing Czech, wasn't he? And that's what they called him. So he got away from Czechoslovakia during the war. He became a war hero and was involved in all sorts of dodgy stuff, and then was able to make his fortune and everything else. And one interesting thing about Ghislaine Maxwell's chart is the fact that she has a Moon Neptune square. So there's her Moon Neptune square, which is kind of linked up with Hades. So if you look at her Hades, she's kind of got Neptune making a sesquiquadrate to the Moon Hades midpoint. I mean, you might see a vague T-square involving Moon, Hades, and Neptune. I wouldn't want to read too much into it because it's rather wide. But she has got both Moon and Neptune aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. So there's her Venus and Mars. So she's got a Venus-Mars conjunction like Jeffrey Epstein, not a particularly close Venus-Mars midpoint. So that Venus-Mars midpoint is at around 27 Sagittarius. So the Moon is making a sesquiquadrate to that midpoint, and so Neptune is making a semi-square. So that Moon-Neptune feeds into that Venus-Mars midpoint, and so Ghislaine Maxwell's sexuality, her attitude to sexual matters, is very much linked with that Moon-Neptune. There's a sort of an ambiguity there. She just goes with the flow, and of course that flow comes from, in the case of her current issues, comes from Jeffrey Epstein. But I mean, I think Hades is a planet that I think does seem to say so much about what's going on with the Epstein files, and it's something that we need to think about. And I think there is a strong case for using Hades in one's astrological work, provided one uses tight orbs, because if one uses wide orbs, then you can find Hades everywhere. When you're dealing with any minor planet, whether it's an asteroid, whether it's the Uranians, Chiron, whatever, really use small orbs, 1 degree, because if you use higher orbs, you get into a situation where your chart is just completely crowded. You just have everything aspects everything else, and there's no discernment in the chart, and you can use astrology to explain everything, which is absolutely not what you're trying to do. So anyway, that's it. So have a great Christmas. If you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.